Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Mendelsohn, the founder of Our Strength Within, where I continue to try to build a community of people who struggle with an invisible illness like myself. I want to make sure people feel seen, loved, and heard. And so today I have Katie joining us to share with us what she does in the community and all the work she does to make people feel seen and heard. So, welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much for having me, Lauren. I'm happy to be with you.
Of course. So let's just start off with the work you do.
Sure. So I'm Katie Collins. I'm a vice president at a government relations firm called G2G Consulting, which stands for Government to Growth. And we are all about making policy change to improve the world, and most specifically, my background is in health, so to improve access to quality care and patient outcomes. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about epilepsy, about women's health, and about how I personally believe that advocacy really has the ability to make change.
That's amazing. So let me ask you, how did you get involved with this to begin with?
Yeah, well, I got involved in health policy a while ago now. I spent 6 years in the Obama White House. And the end of my time there, I was part of the original Cancer Moonshot Task Force. So got involved in oncology, working to make lasting systemic change in the cancer space. Went on to do advocacy for the National Institutes of Health. So that was all around how our national investment in medical research saves lives, and really drastically improves our ability to innovate on behalf of patients. And then since moving into consulting, I've continued that advocacy path in health and spend a lot of time on cancer, but also epilepsy, rare disease, women's health. So lots of areas of this kind of unseen pain or unseen trauma, and how do we use the advocacy to hopefully use that pain towards something positive and to make lasting systemic change.
Yeah, so I share my story because I want to just bring light to what we all go through. I want to bring the invisible illness to life. So I appreciate all the work you're doing and like all the people you work with to make sure this is possible. I mean, at first, like I didn't know what I wanted to do with my story. And obviously, like all we love to do is talk about ourselves. And I said, if I can talk about myself and share my story to make an impact, like that's easy for me. A lot of people kind of like don't want to share what they're going through. It's a very private thing. And so I want to make sure that I have a voice for the people who don't want to share. And then my dad connected us because of the work you do, and I want to make an impact. And so being connected with people like you to kind of guide me to show me what it's like to make an impact. So my question to you is like people who want to share their story, like how do they navigate through that process to help people?
I want to go back to something you said before. I love how you said that you want to share your story, maybe for those who aren't ready yet to share their story. And I also think about those who can't share their story for whatever reason, folks who are so profoundly impacted, those families who are so profoundly impacted, that they don't have the time, the ability to speak out and share what they're going through. And so I find it, I think as you do, a privilege to be able to speak, not for them, but on behalf of them and bring their stories to light.
Yeah, I think it's really important because like when I was in the hospital, right, like my priority was my health, trying to find answers. I've learned that 70% of people don't know why they have seizures. I still don't know why. They've told me that it comes from the right side of my head. That's why I get
Mhm.
headaches. Apparently on the left side. I don't really know how that works, but they know it comes from there, but they don't know why. And you shared something with me about my sleep. I initially told you that I only have seizures in sleep. Can you share with the people who are watching this kind of what you educated me about?
Yeah, I mean, and you go back just a minute to your, 70% of people don't know why they have seizures. I work with a wonderful clinician from the University of San Francisco, and he says that when somebody comes to his office with a new diagnosis of epilepsy, he'll say that unfortunately he can't tell them why they have epilepsy. He can't tell them if he'll be able to help them, and he can't tell them what their future might look like. And so for the age of modern medicine, when we think about that, that's a pretty astounding place to be in a condition. And I think why epilepsy deserves so much more attention and funding. But, you mentioned your nocturnal seizures. Through my work in the epilepsy space with Epilepsy's Action Network, with the American Epilepsy Society, and with a group called PAMI, which is Partners Against Mortality and Epilepsy, I learned about something called SUDEP, or sudden unexpected death in epilepsy,
Mhm.
which is where someone has a seizure in their sleep and unfortunately passes away. And it could be their first seizure and they pass away, or it could be their 1000th seizure.
Yeah.
And we don't know why, that one particular seizure is the one that takes their life. But lots of people who have epilepsy or, have children who have epilepsy have never heard of SUDEP or just the increased risk of mortality that comes with an epilepsy diagnosis. You think about, if you have a seizure while you're walking down the street, you can fall and hit your head, you can drown, that all cause risk of mortality is really high, but that SUDEP phenomenon is really frightening. So that's,
Yeah.
ask you if
Well,
you, I don't want to scare you, but have you
no,
ever heard
no,
of
no.
SUDEP?
Like at first I was like all freaked out, I'll be honest with you, but like I like that that person gives I like that that doctor gives expectations at the beginning. Like I didn't know where it would lead. I honestly was told like we're gonna work so hard to get you an answer. So it gets frustrating when you keep going back and doctors are really expensive. Like my parents have said like no matter what it costs, we'll make sure you get the support you need, right? But some
Mhm.
people don't have that ability to
Right,
have that privilege.
right, right.
So, yeah, when you shared that with me, I got emotional. I still think about it and freak out. But I always say how blessed I am to have seizures and sleep. So when I'm driving, I don't have to worry about having seizures. But then when that was shared with me, it really made me think of things. And what's nice is through education, it helped me become more aware. So I think what you're doing and the power of what you know is really important.
And I agree because there are, and I don't know if we got into this in our conversation, but there are risk mitigation techniques that if you are someone who has epilepsy or you know that you have seizures in your sleep, there are actually detection devices that you
Oh,
can put on your mattress that will detect if you have a seizure. There are wearables that essentially alert someone, someone maybe that you live with, that you're having a seizure, so they can come be with you. They can make sure they try to wake you up and try to mitigate that potential risk.
yeah,
So
like
I
when
think there's
I
power in knowing so that we can do everything we can to.
but it's
Um,
also really hard to like I don't know how to explain it. Like have someone like watching over you, right? Like
I
it's
get that.
really hard as like a 19-year-old to feel like you're a child who like your parents are
Yeah,
always with you through sleep. Like
yeah,
it's hard enough when people are driving me around, right? Someone's always with
yeah.
you, but thinking like like sleeping is kind of like your time. Right.
Private.
Last night
Yeah.
I did have a nightmare and I'm like, okay, I'm not falling back asleep. Like, and then my boyfriend said to me, he said, you got to go back to sleep. Like, you need your sleep. And that's just like really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and another, co-mitigation risk is co-sleeping. So, not to be too personal, but if you
Yeah.
share a bed with someone, whether that's your boyfriend or someone else, having that person in your bed who can, maybe they're going to notice when you have a seizure in your sleep, who's there, to wake you up.
Yeah,
So
I'll tell
that's
you a funny
better than
story.
having your parents.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So when I first started having seizures, we were out in Montana, and there's
Okay.
an L couch like in my parents' like
Mhm.
loft. My dad and I slept on that couch for at least like 2 or 3 months every night.
Okay.
Like there was no privacy. I told my
Yeah.
parents in my room, like, you're not putting a baby monitor because I know
Yeah.
some people do that.
Yep.
Um, but I slept with my dad like on the couch for two, three
Yeah.
months. But like I always say thank you to the caregivers because people always check up on me and say like, how are you doing? And then I'm like, I'm blacked out. It's honestly
Ask my dad.
scarier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly scarier for my loved ones.
Yep.
Like yeah, I don't remember them. My dad's once recorded one and I had two in a hospital. So I watched the videos. But I don't remember it. I'm just exhausted
Yeah.
after. So I
Yeah.
always say thank you to all the caregivers who take care of the people going
Yeah.
through it. So
And
it's,
who have to make sure to take care of themselves too, so that they're
yeah.
able to, because it's exhausting for
Yeah,
sure.
like I have a friend who has seizures and the parents have said they haven't had good sleep in 25 years. And
Yeah.
so it's really hard to understand that. It's like, I sleep because I know that, like, if I don't sleep, that's
Yes.
one of the number one causes of having an episode is
Right.
sleep
Right.
deprivation. So, yeah, I want to make sure people feel like supported, but also like know people like you who are advocating for them if they don't have the opportunity to share their story.
Yeah, I mean, I just came home from Washington, D.C. last night. I had been there for several days for the Epilepsy Foundation's annual advocacy conference, their public policy institute, and we spent a couple days together, talking about what policies are out there that have the ability to make a difference for patients and for families. And then yesterday was the last day of the gathering, and we were all on Capitol Hill meeting with our representatives and our senators to talk about robust funding for agencies and programs that touch epilepsy, and advocating for the National Plan for Epilepsy Act, which is legislation that would create the first ever coordinated, cohesive federal strategy to combat epilepsy.
And so when
So
you support, right? Like you are out there, you are the voice for all of us, right? Are there sometimes like frustrations you have to go through and because like for me I'm very frustrated personally when I don't know answers to help people
mm,
get on board like with policy and stuff like that. Is there frustration when you deal with things like that?
I don't know that I get frustrated when I don't have an answer. I'm very comfortable, saying, I don't know the answer to that. Let me find out and come back to you. I think I get frustrated, or my biggest sense of frustration in advocating, whether it's for epilepsy or women's health or cancer, is that in today's world of constant crises and constant noise, and the level of those
Hmm.
crises. I mean, war in Iran right now. Sometimes I feel like these issues go to the bottom of the priority list, and that's where my frustration is because these are relatively simple things that we're asking for. I'm asking you as a legislator to add your name to this national plan. I'm asking you as a legislator to fight to maintain funding for medical research. And I think my frustration lies in that these are things that are easily doable and that they get kind of buried under some of the other things that attract more attention right now.
And so what I'll like wrap this up with is how did your meeting go with everything going on, right? Like you said, there's a lot going on in the world. Like how did it go? Um, last week, this week, with getting
Yeah.
your point across or the mission.
So what's wonderful about health issues and advocating for health issues is that they're a bipartisan issue, right? Every
Yeah.
legislator, no matter what state they represent, let's if we're talking about epilepsy, has families, has constituents living with epilepsy in their state, in their district, encountering these challenges that we're talking about. So, I really very rarely encounter somebody who's like, I don't care about that, or I don't want to support that. So that's great. We tend to have really great meetings. The level of engagement can vary, between someone who asks a lot of questions and is really interested and maybe someone who doesn't. But I do think the challenge is rising up above some of these other things to actually get them to take that action, to put their name on a piece of legislation, to put their name on a funding letter. And that's why what we do is try to make these tasks or these asks for them really easily digestible and understandable and easy to do.
I
Like
mean, that's
spoon.
what you do when we first spoke. That's what you did for me. You simply educated and you educated me about the process and how you help people.
Mhm.
And what I kind of like took away from what you just shared with me is people are touched by all these invisible illnesses. Like, I don't think I've met someone in my life who hasn't known someone who has cancer, which is very, very sad. But you're able to bring awareness because it impacts everyone's life. I mean, if
And
you're one in the few who have not been affected,
right.
like my heart goes out to everyone who has been. But epilepsy, I mean, 1 in 26 people are diagnosed. So I found that more people tell me, oh, I have epilepsy. Oh, my
Yeah.
mom, my sister, someone has epilepsy
Yeah.
because I share my story.
Well, and I'm astounded when I go into these meetings, and maybe now that I've been in the epilepsy space for about 4 years, I'm not so shocked. But how many staffers, when I sit down, and we usually open the conversation with, we're here to talk about epilepsy. If you don't mind me asking, do you know someone with epilepsy? Do you have
Yep.
any personal experience with epilepsy? And I'd say half the time it's it's my aunt, my boyfriend,
Isn't
my
that
cousin.
crazy? Like,
I met with a staffer whose cousin died of SUDEP.
ugh, yes.
Like, I mean, so, like cancer, I think epilepsy is so prevalent, more prevalent than we probably know because we don't have great data. I would estimate that 1 in 26 is probably an undercount.
I
Um,
I didn't even think or understand what epilepsy was before March 26th of 2020, before it affected my life, because we educate ourselves about what impacts our life. Like
yeah.
my dad had oral cancer
Hmm.
in 2014. Before that, I mean, I was very young, but I continuously talk about it because it affected our lives.
Yeah.
So
And
I
I
just
think
think it's interesting. Yeah.
I want to get to a place where the general public understands epilepsy the way the general public understands cancer
Yep.
or even Alzheimer's. People who aren't in the health space have some understanding that when you have cancer, it's your cells replicating in a way that they're not supposed to, that's bad for your body. Or if you have Alzheimer's, that as you age, there's some sort of plaque buildup in your brain that affects your memory and how your brain functions. And I would love for everybody in a few years to understand that, epilepsy or having a seizure is when your brain, which is this complex electrical
Mhm.
circuit, starts firing synchronously all at once and overrides the circuit breakers in your brain. And that's what causes, for some people might be convulsions or the grand mal seizure, or for others, an absent seizure where they stare into space. I would love for that to be more common knowledge
Me
because
too.
I think when we understand something, it's
Yeah,
less scary to talk about it.
it's less scary. That's why I wanted you to share about what happens in sleep, because for me, it's more about knowledge than kind of living in like the clouds. Like, I want to
Yeah.
understand what could affect me so that, like you said, like you can mitigate the risk of
Yeah.
what. it could be. So I just want to
Yeah.
say thank you for sharing what you understand and
Yeah.
everything that you've become educated about. Like it's really important. And so I appreciate you having a voice for me and having a voice for people who don't share just because they have so much going on and it is a very private thing. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people don't talk about their health or things
Yeah.
behind closed doors. So I appreciate you. So thank you for everything
Yeah.
you do.
It's
So
my pleasure. And I would just encourage anyone, maybe you're not in a place where you want to share your story, but if you are, I would just tell you that there's value to speaking out about your experience, to advocating for change that could help you, or even if it doesn't help you, could help someone down the line with a diagnosis like yours. And just encourage you to look into patient advocacy groups that align with what you're going through. And if you have questions about how to do that, reach out to Lauren and we'll help you figure that out
and
together.
then also what I can put in the comments is either like your website or how to get
Yeah.
in touch with you for
Yeah.
people
Happy
who
to.
are familiar with it. So
Yeah.
I
Sure.
appreciate your time. Thank you for
Yeah. My
everyone who's
pleasure.
listening. And stay tuned for the next episode. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.